Hi, it's Paul Green with another one of our Focus on panels. We're here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. discussing a particular topic. We do cycle through different themes, and this session is it is around sales and marketing. So I'm joined by three sales and marketing gurus. Well, that's what I'm going to describe them as anyway. They might hate that term, but hey, it's my show, so I'm going to say what I like. So before we crack on, let's just sort of go around the room and let my gurus introduce themselves. So Eleanor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Eleanor Lester from Shrewd PR. I'm a PR and marketing consultant, and I help businesses to get their brand and media out there in all the relevant publications and areas, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Childs from the Ideal Marketing Company. We're a full service marketing company, but we always begin by getting to understand your business goals and producing a marketing strategy that fits those.
And last but not least, Marie-Louise.
So I'm Marie-Louise from Lovely Evolution. I'm a branding and Canva design specialist. So I do all things like logo design and custom or bespoke templates. And where it's possible, I do them in Canva so that they're editable by my clients, and I like to collaborate with them using the power of Zoom. And I also teach non-designers how to use Canva better because there's some eye-watering stuff out there. So we can all learn to improve. So that's me.
There is some eye-watering stuff, and I have said ask you to make it stop before now. So the general topic is inclusion and diversity in marketing, which is quite a broad spectrum. How this originally was going to shape up was we were going to explore how marketing advertisers, some of the ploys that they use to attract a female audience, but in feedback to some of the panelists, we thought we'd make it a wider topic. So that's basically what we're going to explore. I'm sure some of the panelists have got some niggles that they see out there in the marketing world. So hopefully we'll find out about those. So Eleanor, do you want to kick us off in terms of your, what you see out there and what you think are some of the things that organizations do to attract different audiences, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent?
Yeah, I think the starting point is that inclusivity and diversity in particular plays to everybody, but it's particularly important and particularly focused on your younger generation, and they are very, very astute at when they're being marketed to, and also if you are being sort of really in your face about it and what they are looking for, and the brands that they'll want to associate with are the brands that do it very subtly, and are the brands that do it without this big sort of razzmatazz, oh, aren't we wonderful because we're being all inclusive and diverse and things. And I looking at various adverts and things like that are on at the moment, I think the other thing for me when it comes to inclusivity and diversity, it's making sure that we're speaking to everybody who might possibly be our audience, but doing it in a way that isn't patronizing, and also that isn't sort of ramming a particular viewpoint down your throat or anything like that. And I think one brand currently that stands out as doing it and doing it really well is Pantene with Lucy Edwards. She's got a fantastic profile on YouTube as a YouTuber talking about hair and beauty and makeup and things. And now she is being featured by Pantene, just talking about hair in general. And she's female, she's beautiful, she resonates with audiences young and old. I mean, my 11-year-old daughter follows her, and she, when she spotted her on the TV, she said, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly who that is," and everything like that. And that's something that I think comes across as very genuine. It's not in your face. It's using her because she's got a point to say, and she's doing it very well.
Jess, you were nodding your head in agreement there with some of the things that Ellen said. What's your viewpoint on what's some of the things that you see out there, maybe things that don't necessarily work for you?
I think in particular, trying to represent people or be representative while not being patronizing, that's a really difficult line to walk. And what I agree with Eleanor there about, I think I'm not familiar with Lucy, but I've seen it with Olay, where the people are more representative of real people. You know, they are using influencers, I suppose, which I suppose does feel like you're jumping on a bandwagon, but the reason why they are influential is because people want to hear what they say, because they're the, you know, these are personalities who've got something to say, rather than being a beautiful model that is voiceless and opinionless and everything else. So I think some brands are doing it really well. I think what within part of that. Oh no, Lucy, I do know her. I do remember the advert. Yes, excellent.
It's all coming now.
I had to do a little. I did a little search.
I was ready to, but she's well, she's got red hair in the advert actually, so that's one of the first things to notice. Yeah, it is. With inclusion and diversity, trying to include people who are of different ages as well, and disabilities, and or different abilities, and it's quite nice to say some more sports people as well, people who have got a range of different just accomplishments. So yeah, that's the main thing I was nodding about, is that trying not to be patronising, trying to represent without being patronising.
Thank you. And Marie-Louise.
So I'm going to sort of flip things a little bit on the head, in that, you know, I agree with all of those points. But in terms of when we're talking about branding, and I think Jess will agree with me, and I'm sure Eleanor, but like the idea of that, you know, you have your target market and your you know, who are they, what do they look like, and there are, you know, going to be some generalizations there, and you know, in terms of, for example, when I'm creating a logo, and if the client is saying, well, they work with women of a certain age, you know, or an age bracket, and they have certain interests, and you know, you're wanting to create something that is appealing to a specific target market. So in that sense, it's not inclusive of all genders, and you've identified maybe a particular type of person, and you know, I would hope that people wouldn't be you know, being specific about you know, race and things like that, but you know, there's also lots of unconscious bias as well. But the point is that, you know, from my point of view, is understanding how we view gender, how we see, and that we understand that we are different, and it will depend on the type of business and service and what you're doing as to whether it's that you want to be all inclusive to everyone. And if you're doing that, that is being, you know, you're being careful that you're not being patronizing. I've definitely noticed that there's a real shift in popular culture in terms of movies, you know, like TV programs, then you've got like adverts and things like that, in terms of the different types of people that are represented. And I think that's great. You know, why should it, you know, why should, you know, it be sort of looking like one sort of type of, you know, category of race and all of that. But yeah, I think it's having that awareness and understanding, you know, to what degree are you representing that, and you're not just doing it just to jump on the bandwagon, that you're doing it because it's very now, you know, or it certainly is, there is a lot of awareness around it. So I think, you know, I'm all for it, don't get me wrong, it's just doing it for the right reason and not losing sight of who you want to appeal to, and doing that research into, you know, like what kind of colors are going to be appealing to that particular market, you know, what kind of fonts and all these different things that make up the brand look and feel. It's making that conscious decision to you know, appeal to that, and you know, getting that feedback that you're on track with that as well. Hopefully that will make sense.
And you can do elements of that, can't you, Mary-Louise, by using colour, and it's not about picking pink or blue. It's about picking soft tones, warm tones, and elements like that. And you can use that to come across within your brand. You don't have to. I think gone are the days where anything sort of female focused is pink and anything male focused is blue. I mean, that's just so past it. But I think you can very definitely use the color palette and then pick tones and to go down that route to represent that. And I think the other thing also is to remember that color has a real sort of psychological influence on us. Red naturally sort of often brings sort of colors of strength and things like that. So it's that sort of thing. I would imagine that when you're talking to clients, Mary-Louise, that you're talking about, and actually getting people to consider from there. It's not necessarily about specific gender, but it's about how are you wanting them to interact with you, isn't it? And it's using that sort of color in those sorts of ways.
Yeah, well, I found I thought I'd do a little bit of, I thought I'd geek out, do a bit of research before, because I know that this topic was sparked by a useful article I shared a few weeks ago. And there was an article that was on a website called Digital Synopsis. This wasn't the one that I'm referencing, but that it dives really into male versus female color perceptions and preferences, and it's got some interesting pie graphs as to that. So I'll put that link in the chat, and then maybe Paul can work out how to make it publicly available.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up, Emil. No pressure.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting because on it there's a pie chart, that's the one, which talks about male participants versus female participants and what their favorite color is. And if we go down that whole like trope of like blue is for boys and pink is for girls, well, interestingly, it says here 57% of the men did say that blue was their favorite color. However, 35%, and the biggest chunk from the female pie chart, said blue was also their favorite color. So it's quite interesting that you sort of that it kind of shakes things up. I mean, my son, he's now 8, but at one point when he was a bit younger, he went through a period where pink was his favorite color and then purple. We had a bit of an argument at the dinner table the other day, because we were talking about favorite colors and things. His current favorite color is black, and he was like, I remember you know, I thought it was great that you were like, my favorite color is pink. And he had a whole discussion with his like classmates or his little gang of friends about, well, pink isn't just for girls, and I'm allowed to like pink or, you know, purple or whatever, you know, which there is a certain degree of those colors being associated you know, with women. Like, one of the things that wound me up years ago was when Bic kind of unveiled this oh, you know, pink pens for her. They were encased in pink plastic tubing. The color of the ink itself was, you know, the standard like blues and blacks or whatever, but it was sort of like for her, and it was just like, that felt really naff in my opinion, because it was like,
as well, really, it's the shrink it, pink it sort of thing, isn't it, of product where where something is designed for one audience and then slightly modified. It's not started from the ground up. They don't wipe the slate clean and then go, okay, what does this person actually care about, or what does this target audience care about? And I think that's kind of coming back to your point really about we focus on targeting, or, you know, trying to actually, in a lot of cases, put off one group if they're not the group that you really want to appeal to, and to really focus in on you know, on a particular audience. But we are talking about a lot of the brands that we've referred to here have been business to consumer, because that's easy to understand. And a lot of the time, I mean, Pantene, that is a broad appeal, and the important thing is to have, you know, a broad enough appeal while also being representative. So there's that difference between targeting and speaking to a particular concern, which could be psychological, it could be emotional, whilst also being representative of an audience. And they don't need to compete. I don't, you know, those two things. because somebody who, I don't know what Pantene or Olay's kind of market might be, but it's trying to be affordable, to have lovely hair. I'm not really sure what their audience is, but I think it probably is likely to be more about their attitudes and their kind of an emotional side, but they're mostly female, I guess. So I see your point about being targeted and actually understand who you're speaking to, and we're not trying to speak to everybody, but of the audience that we are trying to address, we also need to represent everybody who's there. I think a lot of the initial conversation we're talking about with women, I think I can speak only of my own kind of experience of feeling I don't feel that represented in many situations when it comes to I don't have children, I have no plans to have children, and yet a lot of the advertising I get, which is quite poor, or the targeting is about pregnancy tests and fertility and all the rest of it, and weddings and blah, and you just it kind of feels like these advertisers have got so much at me, and they're using it quite poorly, I think, but I don't think that's going to improve either, because of data protection regulations, where I think it's going to become more and more difficult to give the right message to somebody or to make it relevant, and you are left making assumptions that are probably going to be wrong, and stereotyping that every woman of a particular age wants to get married and have babies. So I think it's a double-edged sword, protecting that are giving people choices over data, which is absolutely right. They should have the choice about how to control their, give permissions and everything else. But it's not like a lot of marketers or advertising platforms are using it well anyway. They're not using the targeting, stuff that well. But there we go.
So from a small business context, Jess, in your experience, do you think that small businesses in their marketing are conscious of, looking at who their target audience is and how they should be communicating with them?
In my experience, business owners and marketing companies in smaller businesses, they are familiar with their customers, but they haven't necessarily gone through the exercise of kind of breaking them down and understanding how they differ from each other, how what they're looking for is different and stuff like that. So that's often a practice where they know a lot about who they're serving, but actually going through the practice and distinguishing them hasn't very often happened, and understanding the nuances between them. A lot of people that we do work with are actually business to business, so this representation doesn't come into it. But what does happen and can be a real struggle is, if you do have any visuals, trying to find visuals or photos that include a broad range of people. My biggest bugbear is everyone in the pictures are too attractive. They don't represent most offices. And you might, in some cases, have a diverse range of maybe people from different ethnic backgrounds, but they're all young. Yeah. Nobody is older or a bit plumper, or they just don't represent the general population. And when we're getting a photo shoot for your own business, you end up with that looks like everybody else's. You end up with that can be a real problem, is finding visuals that are more representative of what the general population looks like.
Jess, do you think that's partly because actually as an organisation that they don't necessarily have a broad, and obviously if you're a small company you don't have that pool of people within your organisation, and is it the case of actually the reason that they don't think in that way is the fact that they're not actually sitting in an office surrounded by it? And of course, if they were surrounded by it on a day-by-day basis, they'd easily see, an all-white male audience isn't who we're who we are. So do you think it's partly down to sort of internal and coming from within, and almost if they can have that openness from within, and I know that sounds like a tautology, but it's a case of being aware of everybody and then actually being able to represent themselves outwardly as to what they actually are internally too.
Yes, I think it's, where does it start? It's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? Like, are those pictures there because of what people, you know, continue to see? That somebody has to break with tradition and say, I am, you know, I want to have range of images in all of our marketing materials, because you know, being friendly, being open, being honest, is, it doesn't really matter. You know, anything else about it shouldn't be the case, and it can be really off-putting when you have this absolutely gorgeous person answering, you know, on a headset, and you're like, that person isn't on the end of the phone when I pick up, when I call you. I don't believe
that kind of feeds into sort of, you've got like the cliche stereotypes and just sort of the kind of imagery that is available on the various stock libraries. And it's something that I talk about sometimes when I'm presenting about, you know, how to put yourself out there, you know, being with your branding and things. And, you know, I think it's, you know, for example, if you look at a picture of a meeting, you know, maybe you want to do a social media post and talk about, let's book a meeting or have a meeting or whatever. And you've got the sort of, what I remember was that sort of, if you typed in meeting into a stock library, it would be all around the boardroom. It was sort of like very corporate. Everyone's got kind of very muted suits on. There might be a mix of kind of men and women, probably mainly white, you know, or white, quite frankly. And, you know, they're all shaking hands and smiling, aren't we having a wonderful time, you know? And, you know, that, and you could go down the route of going, oh, well, that's what came up in a meeting, so therefore that's what a meeting looks like, so I'll use that. And it sort of goes back to thinking about, well, what is a more realistic meeting? Like, is it actually meeting in a local coffee shop and people are wearing smart casual, and it's more about capturing that kind of mood, the kind of coffee that's there, and maybe it's sort of slightly more rustic surroundings or whatever? Is that actually more the reality? And is that going to appeal to, again, back to your sort of ideal client, that's you know, what's happening? And I think it's just taking that time to really search for the right images, to really look into the sort of color association and considering that. So it's all these different layers. It's like, let's not be lazy and just go, oh, okay, it's a meeting, and just pick the first one. It's going, what really represents your brand, your organization, what's going to be appealing to the client. And the thing is that, you know, there's been this long-standing bank of fairly generic and kind of particular style of images, you know, like the headset, the woman on the headset. And it's being more specific in your search term and deciding, do you want to be more inclusive in your representation? You know, is that, you know, part of your business goals to be really encouraging that environment? And, you know, it comes back down to your brand values, and but also knowing that the time that we're in, that we want to have that inclusivity within organizations and all of that.
It feels like almost like a mini lie when you're using an image that is so far from the truth of your business or the people who are in your business. And with most you know, marketing collateral, you're trying to encourage trust and build trust. Yet if you use something that doesn't represent who you are because there's a lack of anything else, it feels like it undermines or it can undermine what you're trying to do. But then what's the alternative? Because I think these people who add images to stock libraries, I think they probably keep doing more of the same because it works, because it sells. It's a risk to go out there and probably put things that are are different and breaking the mold. So
it's in the context of me publishing the Business Bulletin magazine, it's certainly made me more conscious, and I spend quite a lot of time finding the right photo, or something that just isn't the traditional stock photo, as Marie-Louise referred to, you know, of white people all the while popping up in the images. That's something that I'm very conscious of, so it doesn't look like that when someone is flicking through the magazine. Same with the people on the cover of it as well. You know, that I was conscious not to have it just be middle class white people on it. So you know, it does it certainly has you think about it. Or I've thought about it more, I guess, in terms of not advertising as such, but you know, that is a representation of me going out there as I'm publishing it. With social media and the way that social media algorithms profile you and feed you adverts, is that beneficial? Is that working? Is that going to improve the type of marketing that people see, do you think?
I think the job of social media algorithms might be about to get more difficult. I think this is kind of going what it'll be interesting to see how updates coming out of the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, is going to impact us, particularly because we're not as bound by EU regulations as we used to be. So I don't know. We need Gail on here probably to kind of talk about what because it's changing all the time. So there's the e-privacy update. I don't know the most recent on it, and that will heavily impact cookies and tracking and what information they can use. But I think a lot of marketers aren't necessarily doing it in the best way anyway. I haven't got the information to hand, but I read an article a little while ago where they actually did some kind of split testing, and it was an advert that was targeting men, and actually in the end, when they had a look at, you know, who was looking at the ad, it was 50-50 whether men or women were seeing it, and that's no better than doing no targeting at all.
Well, also it's looking at the buying habit. So the product end user might be it's a shaver for a man, and it's all, you know, to do with, you know, all of that. But maybe it's actually his wife, girlfriend, partner who is buying it for him. And, you know, so that's where that maybe, you know, there's that 50-50. But Julie asked a good question. Do you think people forget to think about their target market? And I see that a lot in terms of particularly small businesses. I think, and when I'm sort of working with them to sort of do their logo and things like that, they often don't think about their target market. They might have an idea in mind of sort of maybe the icon. They might have got as far as knowing what their business name is, but they often don't think to the degree that they really should be of thinking about who do they really want to be working with and attracting. So it's sort of, I guess it's that awareness. It's not, you know, when you're a small business, branding is a concept that it's a word that's bandied around a lot. I'm seeing it around a lot. Maybe I'm being targeted by branding adverts and all sorts of things. But the idea of your personal brand and, you know, your business brand and stuff like that. But I still think that small business owners don't have the full understanding of what that truly means and all the nuances of that. And as a result, you know, not having that clarity behind who their ideal market is.
Yeah, that exercise is a difficult one to. It's worth it, absolutely, and I think it's the only way to do really good quality marketing is to thoroughly understand and dare to even put off people who aren't ideal for you. That's the thing. In order to have really engaging, powerful messaging, you have to risk well, not risk. It is just the reality that not everyone is going to come along with it, and that's fine. It just means that the ones that do are more likely to convert and everything else. So yeah, I think that is a good point from Julie.
Perhaps that's where our job as marketeers comes in, isn't it? It's to facilitate the conversation and ensure that our clients are aware that their target audience is made up of a variety, in a whole variety of stages of life, and everything, and that's what you have to be considerate of. But you have to do it in such a way that it's meaningful, rather than being perceived to be doing it just because it's the right thing to do. It's fine. It's walking that fine line, and I guess it has to be authentic to you and the brand as well, I think. And I know it's that it's more B2C related, but I think Dove often gets it so right in terms of everything that they're trying to do. And they've also recently, I was impressed by their reverse selfie campaign, aimed at trying to make everybody aware of the dangers of social media, and in particular how it can sort of impact on young girls. And I know that Girl Guiding have for years done regular stuff on trying to encourage and support girls with regards to sort of body image and things like that. Years and years ago, I remember one of my clients, when I was working in a London agency, we got involved with them and actually sort of explaining to how airbrushed a lot of the then sort of J17 images and all that sort of thing was. And it's interesting that it's sort of come full circle, and yet it's something that I think some of the consumer brands have picked up on and remembered. But I think, as we've said previously, it's B2B that possibly needs more guidance and support to truly be inclusive and diverse.
I think there's a level of self-acceptance there and drive. There's been a lot of information and understanding around mental health, and your self-image, both inside and physically, plays into that. And we've got all this access to sort of filters, and there's a dangerous path going down that route. It's sort of that. I guess that's a whole other topic in itself as well. But just as a sort of a side on that, is I personally try not to put any kind of filters on. If I use filters, it's just to kind of fix the image in terms of brightening it up and stuff. And I have got my lovely branding photos by Jo Blackwell. Let's just sneak that in, shout out to her. But so I have the kind of glossy version of myself, like my best self, when I sort of bothered to do all my curl my hair. I have put makeup on today and all of that, but I'm also not afraid to just be like, oh, this is me, this is, I'm not going to spend half an hour getting the perfect selfie. It's sort of like 3 or 4 attempts, and is the double chin showing? A little bit, but it'll do. So I haven't got time. I'm not a Kardashian. And I think we have that whole, I guess, all these pressures put upon us, but we can also choose not to follow that either.
Yeah, I think representation, where does it start when it comes to business stuff? Like with the business to consumer stuff that we're talking about, Pantene and whatever, they do the photo shoots. Obviously, they can pick who they're going to use, and they can use influencers who are more like the everyday person. With the smaller businesses, there aren't to go out and get a photo shoot, or to so we have to pick where how we can show up in a more realistic, representative way. And I think what you're saying there, Marie-Louise, is right, is by choosing not to use the filters, by picking to turn up in a more authentic way, which does, or in a more authentic, vulnerable way sometimes, which does usually make the person you're speaking to feel more comfortable, because they're a human being as well. It's encouraging to know that you are, and that's the kind of thing that does help develop relationships and develop trust and to work together. So
a brand that I really think has done that inclusivity in terms of age and sort of, you know, what they look like and stuff is M&S. They've seemed to be for quite a while, you know, in terms of their advertising. You know, you see women of all ages, and I think that's great, and they've kind of done that for a while. And it makes sense because they have got a wide age audience in terms of their sort of sub brands and product ranges within their clothing. So it would be disingenuous to have like some, you know, 18-20-year-old doing all the you know, modeling of their clothes. They would be completely putting off seeing, you know, sort of women in their 50s and plus thinking, oh well, I feel comfortable buying from there. You know, they need to speak to that, but they've made that point of showing what their customers might look like and representing them, which I think is great.
Interesting. So if we can sort of touch on gender fluidity for a moment and people's choice of the pronouns that they choose to use for themselves, is that going to make it harder from a marketing perspective or advertising perspective, or doesn't it make any difference?
It depends on the company and how they need to refer to people. This is a very difficult one. That it's a subject that we're all learning about, and none of us are going to get it right initially. But we've got to be willing to learn, to get feedback, and instead of just not dealing with it, you know, that isn't a solution. I think it's. Go on. Sorry.
What I was going to say, it's interesting. I mean, the very first experience I had of going to an event where I had my pronouns put on on my card, what do you call it, the tag I had around my neck as I was walking around the site, was actually at an academic conference, and that was 2 or 3 years ago. And I think it's something that perhaps we take a leaf out from what's happening within academia, and actually how people are. It's now sort of second nature. It's automatically, whether you ask for it or not, it's put on your business card, on your lanyards, and things like that. I think in certain scenarios it can be very helpful, and I think it's polite to actually try and go to the effort and find out how, particularly if you're within business, you want to refer to your staff in the way in which they wish to be referred to. And let's face it, people are becoming more visible within communities. You've got the winner of the Great Pottery Throwdown at the beginning of the year used they them. You've got Starbucks, who did a great a campaign looking at I think somebody sort of going through their journey, and it was just very simply done on a coffee cup, and it was very, very simply done and stuff like that. But I think definitely it's something that we are more aware of. It is a very difficult path to navigate, and as Jess said, nobody's going to get it right all the time, but I think we're all human, and we want the people we interact with to feel comfortable. Whether you personally decide to put your pronouns on your LinkedIn page, I think is up to you. I don't think it has to be a blanket rule, but I think similarly we respect those that do, and use those in the way in which we normally would.
I think it's part of not making assumptions, isn't it, about people? Like if we make stereotypes and we're making assumptions about somebody's gender pronouns, about their sexuality, about how, without actually getting to know the target market, the audience, or the individual that we want to have a conversation with and understanding what matters to them. So I suppose it's an important part of improving your marketing and also improving how you develop relationships in business is asking questions and being open to hearing things out. Where that shows up in advertising, that's part of the reason, the way I responded was or your marketing, I think that's part of a systems is giving the space to ask, or putting that that system is, because marketing is not just an avatar TV advert. It's the way that you show up in every communication that you have as a company, whether it's before you take somebody on as a client or customer, whether it's when they've been a customer of yours for 10 years, or even people connected. So I think that's the way that it shows up in your marketing or your comms, is asking them questions about how people prefer to be either referred to or spoken about.
Oh, Dava's got a question about gender fluidity. If it's just she, her, he, him, and they, them, it's understandable. But what is your view on when it goes a bit too far? His words. I mean, have you heard of Z, Zal, Ji, Ja? Anybody want to respond to that?
I don't think you can go too far if it's how people want to be spoken, or want to be referred to. That's the main.
I personally being a grumpy old man, I get nervous about it. I get I get conscious of saying the wrong thing, and I think that's, and again, it's a learning thing, as we touched on earlier. I just hopefully treat everybody as a human being, irrespective of whatever whatever's going on for them. But I just don't want to offend people by using the wrong terminology. So yeah, and I guess that's a good thing, because if you're conscious of it, then I guess you are making strides. And I guess that's the same if you do it in your advertising and marketing. If you're conscious of it, then you're more informed, aren't you?
I guess it's a little bit easier to do it, to manage the interactions when it's face to face, or whether that's online or in person, because you have all the body language around how you're interacting, and you can ask them, well, do you have specific pronouns, or if they a lot of people, from what I understand, who have very clear, have made a choice in wanting to be referred as they, them, and all of that. It's really important to them, and often they will make sure that that, which is helpful, because again, you can't just look at someone and assume, especially if there is that fluidity there in terms of their appearance, because we are visual. We can't take away from the fact that we do make snap judgments. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything nefarious. It just means that we all are brought up in individual ways. We have life experiences, and they will impact how we view the world around us. And I think if you go into interactions, whether it's in the wider form of marketing or as an individual human being to another individual human being, it's about making sure that you're asking the question, and just say, oh, I'm really sorry if I got it wrong. I'm still new to this. I'm still learning, and I think, if the intention is there to be a decent human being, then hopefully the other person will kind of know that and understand that. But equally, you will always get people who will get offended by all sorts of things that you have no control of, despite your intention and what you're putting out there. So it's just trying to lead with your best foot forward, having that awareness, but you can't control all reactions.
It reminds me a bit of going to another country and speaking or trying to speak their language. Most cases in Europe, people can speak good English, but it's respectful to try, and do so possibly apologetically, but at least try. I think particularly in France, because that it means an awful lot to whenever I've been there to at least try and speak French. And you often get kind of that. You have a better relationship because you're trying to put yourself in their shoes and have, it goes a long way, I suppose. And I think it's quite simple.
I think it's being the decent human being that I might struggle with. So we'll wrap it up there. Are there any final points before we end this live stream that anybody wants to get in? that'll
I
be a
think
no.
it's just about being considerate, isn't it? It's about, yeah, I think it's about being considerate and respectful.
Yeah. So thanks for joining me today. For anybody watching this on a replay, then feel free to put your comments wherever you're watching it. We'll try and get back to you on that. I do appreciate that with the topic being diversity and inclusion, our panelists weren't very diverse today. So apologies for that. We'll try harder next time. So thanks very much. We'll end it there. Thanks a lot.